Okay, so welcome to another live broadcast of the Behind the Host podcast. And today on the Boostly podcast, we've actually got a special guest who's from my part of the world here in Norfolk in the UK. So today we're joined by Sascha Tucker. Sascha is a friend and an amazing host who hosts here locally. He's actually scaled to over 100 properties and has built this amazing business in not very many years, in under 4 years, I think it is. We'll find out more. He's here to join us today to tell us his story. Hopefully you can find inspiration from it and you'll be able to learn some tips how you may be able to scale a successful holiday let business too. Before we get started, I do just need to give a shout out to Mr. Mark Simpson. Today, I've talked to several hosts who have got sort of benefits and who have been inspired by his story in the Book Direct Playbook. So if you haven't already, go and check out, it's on Amazon, the Book Direct Playbook. It's a really useful book which will teach you tips and tools and tactics on how you can get more direct bookings, and is under £20 on Amazon, so well worth the investment. So without further ado, let's introduce to you our guest. Let's say hello to Sascha. Sascha, welcome along.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always, I'm just flattered to be considered podcast worthy. It's always nice.
100% you're podcast worthy. So Sascha's very, very modest, but we've met at the Book Direct. Oh no, that was at the summit in London, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was the Book Direct Summit, I think it was, something like that, wasn't it?
Play Summit, I think, yeah. Yeah,
exactly, yeah. And we met, and then we've known each other obviously through friends of friends for a while, both from the same part of the world, in Norfolk in the UK. But that was just awesome to get to know his business. And as soon as I heard his story, I was inspired, and I thought that'd be good to share with everybody on here as well. So Sascha, would you like to introduce yourself and your business, how you got started in hospitality?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Sascha. I'm director and owner of Norfolk Holiday Properties. So we're a accommodation agency based in the fine city of Norwich, and we cover all of Norfolk. I'm one of these people that kind of fell into this industry. So it's not something that I saw myself doing. So if I go back a few years ago, I was employed as a photographer and a videographer, and I lived down in Portsmouth, living and working down there. And I was there about 3 years, and I decided that I wanted to move back to Norwich. I'm from Norwich, all my friends are here, most of my family is in Norfolk, and I decided it's a nice place to be. No offense to Portsmouth, it's also a nice place. But yeah, I wanted to move back. So it was at that point that I hadn't had anything to do with kind of short stay properties, hadn't really had anything to do with Airbnb, for a start. And that's kind of the main thing that we used in the early days, which I'll come on to. But I started thinking, what can I do? I need to move back, and I need to have an income when I go. So I was lucky at that point because my parents had 2 holiday lets, which they managed very much as a lifestyle business. So it was, good income for them, something that they did together. Unfortunately for me, they had no real interest in continuing with them on the management side of it. So that's where I came in. I said, okay, I can manage those, and it'll give me something to do when I come back. So I moved back and I stuck them on Airbnb because they weren't even on there at that point. That's kind of going back kind of 4 years or so now. And then that allowed me to kind of work out the industry, how to manage a property. And then I was able to offer that as a product to our owners, which is what we do now. And that's kind of a short summary of how I got here.
Amazing. So I know we said at the start sort of how many you mentioned now. So that was how long ago? 4 years, did you say?
We just a little over 4 years now.
Amazing. And so in that time you've scaled, what does the business look like now? And, sort of how do you operate now as opposed to, that was a side hustle back then for your parents. What does the business look like now?
I'm lucky enough now that I have a team with me. We've got a nice shiny new office, which we moved into at the beginning of this year on Burr Street in Norwich. So that was, a dream come true. how it compares now. I mean, when you go back to when like first started, obviously just working from home, it's only me, just work out the laptop in my spare room. The next step we took was I managed to get to, I think, kind of about 20 properties, just me ish. Maybe it was between 20 and 30 before we made our first hire. So that at that point, we then moved into the office, into the spare room at my dad's house, and hired an absolute legend called Joe, who's still with us now. And he was, we interviewed, and he came and saw us in this tiny little room. It's like the size of, I don't know, probably the room I'm sitting in now. It's absolutely tiny. You have room for one desk. We would sit opposite each other, facing each other. And I couldn't believe when he said, yeah, okay, I'll take the job. Because I thought, well, who the hell is going to agree to sit opposite me for 8 hours a day in this tiny room? But he did. And I think for the right person, it kind of seemed like an exciting proposition at the time to get involved with it. And that was kind of like the first hiring for me. That was the point that we transitioned from just being, I don't know, one-man band to a proper business. And that was kind of like a key moment for me. I could talk a little bit about our first property as well, because I always kind of like telling that story. So the first one we took on, so the first one I took on as a proper kind of customer, not owned by either of my parents' properties, so the third property we had. I got lucky at that point as well. I say I get luck a lot. I got lucky then because it happened to be a nice property that came to me. So it was a friend of a friend, and at that point I would have said yes to anything. That's what I'm getting at. So I was fortunate that it was actually a decent property. So it was based in Norwich. It had parking, garden, walking distance of everything, and it did really well. So straight away at that point, we had some reviews from guests, and I had one happy owner underneath my belt, because there is an inertia to get over. It is extremely difficult to make somebody trust you with what is often their single biggest asset when you have no credentials, you've got no track record, and in my case, you're a young guy, on your own. So that was the hardest part, is kind of getting the ball rolling. But I was fortunate the first one, because it happened to be a good one. Said yes to it, did well, and then we went from there.
And for people who are listening in, what would you say made that a good one? Because there'll be people who are in similar sort of boat to how you was 4 years ago, who are looking to get their first, perhaps they've got a couple of their own units, or perhaps they do rent to rent or something like that. What would you say to the people who are looking to manage and about getting that next property? What sort of things made that a good one and that they should look for?
Yeah, I think that primarily it has to be a certain standard property, regardless of what location it's in and what type of property it is, whether it's an apartment or a terrace. It has to be nice. And we always say now, because when owners come and talk to us, say, what kind of things should I be looking at? Sometimes we'll come to us at a stage that they just want to know where they should look to invest. Maybe they don't even own something yet, but they come to us and they ask for advice, and we say, well, think about where you want to go and stay. When you go away somewhere, you want something more than where you live at home. So if you think, don't think plain. It's got to, if it's got some character about it, some work, that's great. If it hasn't, then make it colourful. Put some feature walls in there, all that kind of stuff. So it just can't look like somewhere that you'd normally go and rent, I suppose. And then once you've kind of got that base, then start looking at like the things like location. Parking is obviously a massive one, but it's not the end of the world. It just affects what kind of price you can charge for it. So that's where I start.
That's cool. And so fast forward now to when you've taken on Joe, which sounds amazing, and you're around that 20 sort of properties stage. What changed within the businesses? Did your day-to-day routine change, as opposed to doing, I guess, everything at the start as you've taken on more members of staff? How has your routines changed as you've developed as a company?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing that changed is that what Joe and I used to do is that we would alternate and have a weekend off. So every other weekend, I then got to have off. I mean, kind of. I'm one of these. I don't really switch off. and even when I'm not the one that's working or say on call for the evening, it's, you know how it is, you do this yourself. It's really hard to actually not be at work. So, but that was the first thing we did. So we kind of had some hours, structured it, and then Joe kind of took over a lot of the kind of the guest side of things, and then I dealt with the owners. And that's basically still how we structure our business now. We're still we're a small team. I've got 4 members of the team now, and we still split it between guest experience and owner experience. So there's 2 very different sides to the business. So we've got a couple of people who say their main job is to answer the inbound calls from guests, emails, messages on all the platforms, make sure that they've got the information they need for their booking. They'll answer the questions if they have any during their stay. And then the owners is, that's a massive job in itself to manage, to manage that side of things. So, the owner statements and the payments, and even just the things when stuff goes wrong, something breaks down the property and we've got to get an appliance engineer out, and that's got to be coordinated and fed back to the owners. So that's a massive part of it. That's kind of how we split things up at the moment.
That's cool. And what I love about that is the focus on the 2 sides, because there'll be many hosts who, have either got their own listings or maybe don't manage for people at the moment, but all of a sudden you've got 2 clients, haven't you? You've got your guest on one side of the coin, and on the other side you've got the client, the owner of the property, and you're providing the service at both sides. So having that focus on both is just so important, and it clearly works at the end of the day for as you're building more, as you're taking on more listings. Has there been any challenges along the way while you've been growing?
Yeah, I was going to say then, I think that your guests and your owners, they are 2 very different customers. So we're kind of an unusual industry in that if you're in the property management business, you have 2 completely different sets of customers. They have to be dealt with different ways. They have to be marketed to in very different ways. So that's just an extra challenge that unfortunately we have in this industry. And I think that when we kind of moved into more or kind of grew the management service, I kind of underestimate how much time you need to allocate to dealing with the owners and making sure that they have everything that they need. So that was something that we learned pretty quickly. The more properties that came on, right, we need to dedicate more time to this. So yeah, that's one challenge we have had to overcome. The other one, which I was going to mention, this is more on kind of the guest side of things, dealing with those. So back in, when it's only one person in the business, it's really easy to have everything you need to know in your head. So I mean, even layouts of properties. So I happen to know, I'm pretty sure I know all of our properties, like almost like my own house at the minute, which I'm surprised because I've kind of kept that knowledge as we've gone. But see, I know where the boiler is, where the fuse box is, and things like that. I just have it in my head. When you then bring people in the team and you want someone to be able to manage that kind of stuff, you can't expect them to know that, especially if they come in later on and they've got X amount of properties that they have to suddenly know. Because when a fuse trips and a guest rings up to the power's gone off, you have to be able to deal with that. So the way that we kind of got around it, because this was a challenge, basically getting stuff out of my head and putting it down so that it could be accessed by everyone. We use a great bit of tech called SharePoint, which I'm sure everyone will have heard of. It's part of the Office 365 suite. So we have a database for every property, and it goes into very in-depth into kind of the property information. So on that, it will say, where is the boiler, where's the fuse box, water stop clock, gas meter, Wi-Fi. And then it also has things about the layout of the property, so that even if, let's say one of the team picks up the phone and they've got an inquiry, and someone says, has it got a ground floor bedroom? Because I've got, my mother's coming and she's not very mobile. All that information is there. So it's kind of the working and living document that evolves, so that if somebody asks a question and the answer isn't on there, or you find out, it goes on there for next time. And that's been a game changer for us.
I love that. I love that, because at the end of the day, like you say, it grows with you. It's something where even if your staff hadn't step foot in that property, they've still got somewhere they can go to answer that question for a guest, and save time ultimately. So that is it's a massive one. Is there any other tech that you use in your business that's helped you along the way?
The only other key one for us is our booking system. Obviously, we can't function without that. We're on Super Control, which it does the job.
They're awesome. Yeah, Super Control. One thing that I love about Super Control is the booking widget is very easy to book with. Boostly, as you may know, we sell websites, and so we get to see a lot of the different PMSs, how they interact and how they work on a website, and Super Control is very good. Along with we're partnered, Boostly's partnered with about 15 different PMSs, but Super Control is one of the ones we're partnered with. And is there any other pieces of tech that you use with it, or anything else that you found helped you along your journey at all?
I'd say we're actually fairly light on the tech. I know some people have just absolutely loads and loads of it. I'd say we're pretty light. I mean, the two things we use is Office 365 and Super Control.
That's cool.
Oh, actually, no, there is one more. We use a password manager called Dashlane, which is awesome. I'd recommend checking that out, so that you can give logins and share them without actually having to share the password. So again, when you have a team, if you want people to have access to a single login site, you can do that quite safely. So that was important.
What was the name of that one again?
Dashlane.
Dashlane. Yeah, cool. That's amazing. There's two things which I find inspiring about that. One, obviously, is that you can you can be relatively lean on tech and still build a big business. And the second thing is that how it just works. Everything seems to just work for that, which is cool. So having a good PMS and a good, effectively you using like Office as a organizational tool, effectively, is that
I didn't want us to have to be logging in and out and switching applications too much, so I wanted to keep it as lean as possible. So every tool that came with Office 365, I've had a good look through that now to see which ones we can use, and I think there's still more in there. There is so much. I think there is more tools we can use within it, but yeah, SharePoint. Can't recommend it enough.
So let's talk about where you're marketing your business at the moment towards guests. Where do you tend to get your guests come from, and how do you market in general?
Yeah, I mean, no surprises. The main driver of bookings for us is the OTAs, and obviously the big ones. It's Airbnb first and foremost. Booking.com and Vrbo then make up a good share of it. Then we've kind of a mix of the others, but like everyone who's after Book Direct, we use it as a tool to hopefully win either repeat business or convert them to a direct booking when they first get in touch. So that we consider that kind of a lot of our marketing spend, because obviously there's service fees involved in those sites. So that's where a lot of our kind of marketing budget is going to. And then the other kind of places that we advertise, like more traditionally, I suppose, like to get our website and name out there, we use all of the local tourist websites primarily.
That's cool. And is it different for the people listening who want to increase the number of units they've got? Do you market differently towards owners, or is that just towards guests and owners see that and then come to you for their listings?
We've tried both, and I think that the latter that you just said, I think you can tick two boxes with at once there. So because owners search for the same thing that a guest would, and then if you're marketing to guests and they see an advert for guests, they're going to just assume that company is going to offer management services as well. So I mean, we've actually done very little marketing for owners. It's all been quite organic, which is nice. I mean, I think we do quite well from our name, because if people are based in Norfolk and they're looking at holiday homes, they type in Norfolk Holiday Properties, and then we come up. So that, I think we do quite well out of that. But there is demand. There is a lot of demand for it. So if you can offer a property management service and do it well, you are going to get kind of people talking to each other. So we get a lot of owners who know another owner, and it's kind of grown that way. But yeah, we have a pretty healthy pipeline of leads kind of coming in. So we haven't really had to go out there and, source more.
And compared to the early days of, when you mentioned, I think one of the lines in this podcast was, I'd have taken any property and that so happens the property you took was good.
Yeah.
Do you get many properties that come to you now which you either turn down, or how does that look like these days? Is it a case of, do you have sort of a vetting sort of process?
Yeah, I mean, occasionally we do, which is always heartbreaking because we'd like to take it on and we'd like to be able to help out the owner, but sometimes you just have to advise them that it's not suitable. We'll never take on a property now that if we're not confident that it will generate the returns that them and us would be happy with. We just won't advise them to go down that route.
Cool.
Yeah, so I mean, we're all about, it'd be easy to take on anything, especially if you are keen to grow your business, get the numbers up. It's a hard thing. It would be easy just to say yes, yeah, and we'll do it. And we are about growing in the right way. So now pretty early on, I kind of had it in my head that, right, we have to have a certain standard here, because it's not worth it. If you take on a property which is substandard, you're going to damage your brand. You're going to have give yourself a whole headache of bad reviews. It will hurt you. So yeah, we do have a certain set of standards, and we do occasionally have to turn properties down for the right reasons.
Exactly, and that's like you say, your focus. You're serving both sides, so you want it to be right for the guest side as well as the client side, don't you? And it's kind of managing that, which is cool. I'm glad you mentioned the name, because it's something which I wanted to come on to, was Norfolk Holiday Properties. Did you know back then that was going to be a really good domain to have, or was that something which has happened, sort of with a bit of luck? Talk us through how the name came around.
Yeah, I suppose a bit of luck. Yeah, I think if you were to try and if we were to have done this a few years later, you'd really struggle to get our domain name. So I'm very, very proud of it, because it's good. That's what it says on the tin. The reason that we have it is because my dad bought it. I mean, the company didn't exist, but when this is kind of 10 years ago, probably between 10 and 15 years ago, that domain was bought. And there was the company didn't exist, but my dad bought the domain after kind of starting their first holiday home. And back then it was there's no kind of Airbnb or anything. The sites was owners direct, I think. Is that one of the? I might have got that wrong. There was like an old site, and that was just how people did it.
Yeah, I mean, there used to be a case of they'd find you, ring you up, wouldn't they, and book that way, and then Airbnb.
Yeah, it's very much that kind of stuff. Yeah, they send checks in the post and things, bank transfers. Yeah.
It's funny because things are going slightly back more that way now. Usually people have got the tech to be able to have direct bookings as you have through your website. And for anybody who's listening to the podcast instead of watching on the YouTube, Sasha's actually sitting in front of it. It says Norfolk Holiday Properties with a new logo. Is that new rebrand?
Recently? Yeah, we had a little rebrand when we moved into our office on Burr Street at the beginning of this year, and at the same time before we had it decorated and branded and the signage go up, we had a little rebrand. So before that, the logo hasn't changed massively, but it was something that I made myself just on Photoshop, and it had done as well, but it needed a little bit of refining. So yeah, a little rebrand, and sitting in front of our banner now upstairs in our office in the meeting room.
Love it. And is there anything which your perception of hospitality or, sort of Airbnb or of serving has changed since the early days? Is there anything which you thought, your views have changed on hospitality or anything like that since the early days?
Yeah, my perception of it. Yeah, definitely. I don't think that the term passive income should ever be used in the same sentence or paragraph as short-term letting, or probably even property in general, because it's anything but. I mean, it's this industry is brutal. You've got to be hard as nails to kind of get through the reviews and things. So it's 24/7 business, as you'll know, and it's one of the hard things is that you can't really switch off. I certainly find it hard to, even now. You have to have somebody on call all the time, and even if that's not you, you are still kind of responsible for them. So yeah, it's it's not something to be underestimated, but it's not to say it's something you shouldn't do, because it's an amazing industry, fantastic opportunities.
And really, that brings us on to sort of last few questions, really, which is what has this business allowed you to do? How has life changed on a personal level since the early days?
I'm a lot busier. not less time off. Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing that I like about this is the opportunities that it brings, and it's about for me. I mean that in the sense of the people that I meet. So people like yourself, I meet fascinating people that I can chat to for hours, and who knows where that will lead in the future. And then what's also nice is that I'm getting to do that, have these opportunities, whilst also doing something which is helping Norfolk and putting us on the map. So it's nice to be able to have those opportunities as a byproduct of running a business which can contribute to tourism in Norfolk. We get to bring thousands of guests here every year, which is fantastic.
Well, it's one of the things which, you bring pleasure to both the guest side of things, obviously doing a great job for the hosts. I don't know.
Like to hope so.
Yeah. And it obviously shows, which is amazing. And thank you. It's great. I don't know what's going on with my camera. Sorry. Anybody who's seeing the live on the camera, I keep disappearing. So I'm just going to switch my camera.
Lights have gone off.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just power cut at this end. But yeah, that brings us towards the end. I really feel we've got to know your business and your awesome, sort of offering here in Norfolk. As we come towards the end of these, we like to, do a couple of quick fire sort of questions. So what I'm going to do is just get my camera. There we go. Using my old camera instead. But yeah, just a couple of quick fire questions. The answers can be as short or as long as you like. So what does your morning routine look like?
I'm not a morning person, not at all. So I'm someone that is I struggle to get up early. I'm not someone who gets up at 5 a.m. and goes for a run, as much as I would like to be doing that. I tend to I work late and then I get up a little bit later as well. So I'm often not the first person in the office, but then I often stay later. So I'm putting my hours in.
More of a night owl than a
yeah. I'm trying to shift it, but I am at the moment.
That's cool. What is the best compliment you've ever been given?
What, personally or with the business?
Either or.
Best compliment. I don't know. I think when you give us praise for getting crossing the 100 property mark, and I think just being like I said earlier, being invited on a podcast like this, that's a massive compliment. So yeah, thank you.
Hey, there's so many people. I mean, I know people listening to this on the live and also on the podcast afterwards. It is no mean feat to get any hospitality business going and to keep it going, and then to scale it and grow it, build a team around it. That all takes time, effort, hard work, and it's obviously paying off, which is why we love to meet people like yourself, Sascha, and have you on the Behind the Host podcast. So, last question then is, who inspires you?
Who inspires me? Sounds a bit cheesy, doesn't it? I was going to say my dad.
No, it's good.
He was there, and he still is there to kind of support me, and particularly kind of during the early days when it was just me. He was able to provide me with some support and advice. And yeah, I hope to kind of be successful in that, like he has been, and live a good life.
It's amazing, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who are going to be resonating with that. Thank you for sharing, Sascha. And for the people listening, how can they get in touch with you or come and view the homes as well?
Yeah, so our office is on Burr Street in Norwich. We're next to the John Lewis car park entrance. For anyone who is local coming by, give us a wave. Our website, norfolkholidayproperties.co.uk, and follow us on Instagram. So username Norfolk Holiday Properties, and my personal one is Sascha Tee.
Awesome. And I'm sure you're going to get some followers off the back of this. Please, everyone, go and check out Sascha's site, and also go and see the lovely places, because you've got some amazing places, around Norfolk and around the Broads as well. So, Come and stay, exactly. Well, thank you very much, Sascha, and for your time today. We'll draw this to an end. Is there any closing comments that you want to share with people?
Thank you for having me. If anyone wants to reach out and chat to me, like I said, I like meeting like-minded individuals who are working in the industry. So yeah, send me a message. I would love to meet. If you're local, pop out for a coffee. Otherwise, we'll have a chat.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sascha. And we'll speak to you again. Bye for now.
Having a blast, gonna get it on the Bruce Lee podcast. Bruce Lee like Bruce Lee, cause it's so hard and the T is loose leaf. Making up those rhymes, don't write it, just do it loosely.